The left will never stop their agenda to take over America. You are their enemy, and they will not negotiate. Prepare yourselves. Welcome to the Blue Shark Show with your host, Mike Lang.
So last Commissioner Court, we had, the previous, so 2 ago, we had the invasion on there. We thought it was no-brainer, should have been 5-0, and it wasn't. It was 3-2. So it was put back on Commissioner's Court by Dave Eagle. We had over 600 plus signatures. We had a show on it. Go see our last show. It was great, second to the last show. And I tell you what, the invasion is going crazy right now. People are all saying, hey, shut down the border. But while this was going on, we had another incident at Commissioner's Court that kind of ties in. And what we had is we had a couple Democrats that came up to speak against the petition, and it kind of broke out, and we had one that's running for county clerk, and his name is Harold Granick, and he spoke on the invasion. Of course, he didn't want the border shut and all that, but then something else came up, and we had talk between Harold Granick, a talk between Christine Leftwich, which she did a great job in citizens' comments to bring up what this Democrat, Harold Granick, was doing.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting sideshow that sparked out there, and it started there in the beginning of court and picked up a little bit later. But, one of the points that the Democrats were trying to make is that this resolution through the county is not going to do anything. But that's what they said about the Second Amendment sanctuary resolution from 2020 election cycle, and, we ended up getting constitutional carry out of it.
To me, the important thing about the two agenda items involving the invasion at the end of the day were Commissioner's Court, or at least the three amigos, or the two amigos for this Commissioner's Court, set aside the petty politics that took place at the last court and did the right thing. So for that alone, I commend the two that voted against it last time, seeing the light, maybe hearing from their constituents and listening and doing the right thing. So first of all, I want to say that. Second of all, it's nice to see a Democrat get up and be a proud Democrat, even if it's,
right,
Harold Granick. So it was nice to see that. It was not so nice to see some of the things that went on later, but I'll tell you what, Christine Leftwich, she knocked it out of the park. She came in with facts. She was on top of her game, and she was ready to play, and I'm really proud of her.
And so am I. She did a great job on the citizens' opening comments. And, I actually, and we're going to go back and forth between what happened with Christine Leftwich and Harold Granick and the invasion, because we kind of tie it together with the two Democrats that spoke. And the two Democrats, of course, Harold Granick and then Grant Wood. And Grant Wood is running against Dave Eagle, the county commissioner for Precinct 4. But I actually went by the judge's office today to thank him for saying, hey, thank you for saying Dave Eagle's resolution. We're going to go with that. I think that was a good job. I know he was pushed and prodded to do it, but he still did it. And it was voted 4-0. Of course, Cotton was gone, so it was 4-0 unanimous on the court, and that was a good job. Now, Harold Granick and Grant Wood both spoke against the invasion petition, saying that, hey, the court shouldn't be wasting its time. The typical Democrat, there's, we don't have anything wrong at the border, open borders, let's take your ARs, let's kill babies. They're definite Democrats, folks. If you like the show, you like what we're doing, please go to thebluesharkshow.com and sign up for our member-only access at $4 a month.
Yeah, and at least they're running as Democrats. It was funny to watch. One of them, I forget which one of the two clowns it was, that said, well, if y'all want to do something about this, why don't you do something about Ukraine? It's like, we're talking about national security and the opioid crisis and the fentanyl issues and child sex trafficking, stopping all that stuff. And, of course, they want to go right into the mainstream liberal media.
Harold Granick said, the invasion is actually what's going on in Ukraine. And, what the heck is millions and millions and millions of illegals coming across our border? That is an invasion. Of course, the Commissioner's Court voted 4-0 because they got prodded into doing it. But I think the side show of this kind of took hold, and it went from Christine doing her 3 minutes in the beginning, and she talked about Harold Granick And what happened with the medical board and his license, now he's a doctor, an eye doctor, and what occurred several years ago, and she brought the documentation to the judge in the court and said, here it is, this is the fact, he's running, he's a candidate, and you should be aware because he's part of the commissioner court as the county clerk takes the minutes and things like that. And
He would be anyway.
And that's what the position he's running for.
Yeah.
And which is, I think, what, all women and one guy in the two offices?
90% female staff.
99, 95, whatever. So, here's a female staff, and then the medical board, and there's documents. You can do a FOIA. She gave those documents to the commissioner's court, and she laid it out. So please go watch that video. So what happens during the citizens' comment period is Christine gets up and talks about it. And then Harold Granick, when it comes up for the invasion agenda item, he goes off topic. So before we get into that, we've got Christine Leftwich in the studio today. So Christine, it's great to have you here. Can you tell us kind of what occurred that day?
Sure. So, I had wanted to get out the information about Harold Granick, obviously, I thought people should know because, of him running and things like that. And so when I went into it, I had prepared what I was going to say. I wanted to be very careful about that. And of course, I came up, said I was speaking on behalf of the Hood County Real Republicans PAC, but also as a citizen of Hood County because, that's one of the privileges we have of going up to Commissioner's Court. And I'd had the rules of the court, so I made sure that I used some of that language when I was saying, what I'm speaking about. And so anyway, I just, went through, what I had said about him, about, his action with the medical board, how it had been appealed to district court, and then, of course, affirmed by the appellate court. I was really concerned that the judge was going to shut me down, which is why when I was speaking, like I said, I was making sure I was following the rules, not wanting to demean him, but say, this is all public information.
Right.
This is stuff you could literally search the internet and you're going to find that appellate court decision. You can go to the medical board, you can pull the medical board decision, and it literally uses the term fondling breast, in the findings of fact. So when I mentioned that, I said, this is a finding of fact. I'm not making this up. And so, I was able to get through everything. And I was a little disappointed because originally I thought I'd have 5 minutes, but because we had so many people speaking that day, we cut it down to 3. But
so you did give, going back and looking at the video, and I watched it live, but you gave the documents to the commissioner's court, right?
I did. They got a copy of the medical board complaint, the decision of the appellate court affirming it, copies of the local government code that lays out the duties of the county clerk as it relates to commissioner's court, because that's very important as well. And so yes, they had everything. And then I had also pulled some things from the Democratic Party platform. I wasn't able to speak on those when I found that I had 3 minutes. I had to cut some of those things out. So that was one of the things. But, that talked about people being responsible for their own actions, that the Democratic Party takes harassment and bullying very seriously, and, and things like that. And so I thought, well, he's running as a Democrat, and his own party platform has got some things in there that won't look good for him, you know. And so I did provide those documents to them as well. And just wrapping up, I really wanted to make sure that people knew, hey, the court now has these documents. Make an open records request, because they'll have to provide them. So if you have any question about whether this is true or go ahead and make that open records request.
And the facts are there.
They are there. Absolutely.
Right. And I noticed, you got up to speak and you did your 3 minutes, and you did, once again, a great job, very professional, very concise, very factual. And then later on, during another agenda item, it was on the invasion of the border, Harold Granick came up to speak about, he had like 5 minutes on that one because that agenda item was different. And he spoke maybe 30 seconds on the the border, but then he got into what you had talked about.
Yes. I was furious. I couldn't believe what was happening because, the judge went ahead and allowed it and gave him more time than I even had to speak on him to completely come through and plead his case essentially. And
it was kind of funny because, not funny, but it was kind of strange because you're right. You had the 3 minutes. He had 5 minutes, and the judge actually said that he has a right to face his accuser. Well, this was a totally different agenda item that didn't match the agenda item.
Right.
And he was able to speak on a different topic.
Right. Exactly. I even went home and read the rules to see if there's any kind of thing I can take, any kind of action, because I was really mad about that at the judge. I'm like, come on. He has, he's shut people down before if they didn't sign up, if it wasn't an agenda item. And here he let him go, let him speak, ramble on. And I felt like I was almost like, I'm sorry, but there's already been a decision from the medical board and the courts, and you're just, it almost sounds like you're trying to get a do-over, and that's not going to happen. But
and
anyway,
he's explaining it, right?
Yes.
He's trying to explain this all away, and you're right,
Exactly.
there was a decision. So he goes on, and his 5 minutes is up, and then he keeps going. Yes. And then, because I can only see one view of the dais, because, Drew Whitaker, who is the IT guy for the county, was supposed to buy another camera so we could see live who's talking, go back and forth, and that hasn't been done yet. So I hope it gets done soon. But so we weren't able to see you speaking or Granick speaking or kind of the crowd. And can you tell us kind of what happened when he went over his 5 minutes?
well, I immediately stood up, and then Mr. Biggers was in front of me in the row in front of me. He stood up as well. We both stood up.
The GOP chair.
Yes, exactly. And stood up and said, time's up, that's enough. And, and initially we were very frustrated even that the judge had let him speak on that. So, I remember the judge said, okay, he was done. And then I stood up and I asked for rebuttal time. I said, I want rebuttal time. I get a chance to rebut exactly what he said. I want to, and I was literally going to go back up and just say, hey, this is what the appellate court said. They upheld the order of the medical board, the district court, and, they had substantial evidence to do what they did. And then the judge wouldn't let me rebut. And of course I'm like, going on. And well, then I hear him, yell for Sheriff Deeds. And I'm like, okay, I guess,
I think he said something like, you're out of order, Sheriff Deeds.
Yes.
We've heard that before, but,
Yep,
and that kind of shut it down from there. And then I think, Dave Eagle, Commissioner Eagle, joined in and started talking about
Yes.
The invasion, which they should have been talking about to begin with. So we were actually looking at the invasion and doing a show on that, which we started. And then since this Harold Granick thing came up, and like I said, you did a great job presenting that. And we, appreciate you trying to keep the citizens informed on what's going on with, even the Democrats versus Republicans. But this is more of an issue that as a man, I know how I feel about it. And if that would have been my wife, my daughter, my mom, something like that, it's just, we can go somewhere else with that. But, as a woman and you speaking up like that, I applaud you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's unsettling. Even reading through, the descriptions of some of the counts that were brought against him in the initial complaint that was filed with the medical board. I mean, it was just atrocious, and to think that this could be the person working, being the county clerk of this county. And then, if I was a woman even working in that office, like, I don't want to come within 10 feet of this man. Like, that's just, it's going to make for a very uncomfortable situation. And not only that, the fact that this is a person who, couldn't even abide by the orders of the medical board, was told not to treat female patients anymore. He continued to do that. So he violated that, and this is the person who's going to be the keeper of the records of Commissioner's Court and all of that. I mean, it can't happen. We can't let it happen.
Well, I appreciate what you did in standing up and letting the citizens know, and because it's definitely something that people of Hood County need to know. And I want to thank you for coming in the studio today, too.
You.
Yep.
Thanks.
Christine did a great job. And, let's kind of give the folks a background of what Christine was going over and some of the documents and some of the things that transpired with the medical association.
What's important is this is not conjecture. This isn't my opinion. This isn't me throwing stones at somebody. This is legal documents that are available. Anybody can get these from the Texas Medical Board, or I guess you can now do a FOIA request with the Hood County Commissioner's Court because they have copies of it that are now as part of the record. It's important to understand that Dr. Granick was accused of fondling women's breasts who were his patients. And also another allegation in that medical board filing was he failed to provide medical service to one of his patients who had presented at an emergency room. This was adjudicated by that medical board, and Harold Granick appealed the case. It went before another basic court. That court heard the facts, took into consideration everything, and at the end of the day, they upheld what the original medical investigation said. So let's be real clear. This is not people throwing stones at Mr. Granick. These are facts. This is history.
From the actual case, the actual judges, and the actual documents that were presented.
Yeah, and I wasn't there when all that stuff happened. I probably wasn't even alive. Some of the stuff was a while back, but I found it interesting that throughout his time where he was going back and forth, and of course Judge Massengill let him, plead his case even though it's already been adjudicated. But he kept trying to say things like, oh, well, 3 of the victims were dead by the time this appeals happened anyway, and, look at all this other stuff and all this, like, political maneuvering and, sleight of hand type of stuff, and it didn't really sit well with me.
We talk about this because Christine Leftwich was in citizens open comments. And then Harold Granick, under item number 1, which was the invasion, he went on, and you touched on the judge letting him go for 3, 4, past 5 minutes. And the judge actually kind of got upset and let him go. He got upset at the crowd because after 5 minutes, the crowd is like, oh, his time is up. Not only is his time up, he's not even talking about the agenda item.
Well, and he wanted special treatment. And like a typical Democrat, he wants special treatment. The rules don't apply to him. And, that was actually an open meetings violation. And as proud as I am of the judge for putting the personal politics aside and, adopting Eagle's resolution, I was also disappointed that in that same agenda item, he went and broke the Open Meetings Act regulations that govern how these meetings are supposed to go right there in front of everybody, just shameless,
Right, and let's be clear. Christine got up during the citizens' comment part. She was only given 3 minutes to speak because so many people signed up for citizens' comments. And I was in the audience that day. Harold Granick was not in the audience during citizens' comments. He actually came in on the tail end of the citizens' comments, and he was speaking about the invasion, which is an agenda item, and he was then given 5 minutes to speak. Christine only had 3. He was given 5 minutes to speak about the agenda item on the invasion. He spent 30 seconds speaking about the agenda item, and then Judge Massengill commenced to let him speak another 4.5 minutes about his medical board case.
Yeah,
and
right.
Then some. Yeah. And then, threatened to get the sheriff on Christine. And
yeah, he said that. He was like,
and
order,
Christine,
right?
Christine rightfully asked for additional time. She only had 3 minutes in the citizens' comments. Harold Granick was given 4.5 minutes plus some bonus time to defend himself when Christine was only given 3, and Christine was there doing it at the right time. So this is some home cooking bias showing by the court, again, unfortunately applying the rules only when it applies and not applying them when it's for their buddies.
And she asked for a rebuttal, and of course, like you said, she was denied. And then she's like, "Hey, wait," and he's like, "No." The judge is, he basically says that they have a right as being the accuser to stand up for themselves and come back and say something about it. Well, that's not the time for it. And for him to say, sheriff, that gets pretty touchy.
Well, I find it ironic that the judge was real quick to call for the sheriff a couple of days ago when he, in fact, shut the sheriff down from speaking on this agenda item to
On the
commissioner's
invasion.
court before. So it's kind of a head scratcher on what's kind of going on behind the scenes here. You're going to shut down your sheriff, but you're going to let the Democrat candidate for office speak extra time when you're the Republican judge of Hood County. And it's just kind of interesting.
Well, and the judge said, well, everyone deserves to be able to face their accuser, which is right. In that 8-year period from the time the allegations were first made till the last appeals was done, he had 8 years to do that, and the courts ultimately ruled and said, no, this guy's a groper.
Yeah, well, the judge tries to talk about due process in a commissioner's court.
Yeah.
Dr. Granick had his due process, and he had an additional due process when he had his appeal. So don't tell me that junk.
Yeah, and he's running for an elected county office, countywide, and these things matter, and people need to know what's going on. And thank goodness we have people like Christine Leftwich that says, hey, look, this guy, he shouldn't be doing or allowed to do this. And, you know, I don't know, how would you feel if that was your daughter that he was taking care of as a medical doctor? How would you feel, or wife?
Well, it's like the court said, he breached public trust. He is basically a menace to society, and he posed a threat to, you know, his patients, and that's why they put that restriction on him, saying, hey, you can't see any women.
Right.
You can see no females.
That's how I feel. He was told not to see females in his practice, and he did it anyway. What does that tell you? He cannot control his urges.
Or emotions or anything. So, you know, I guess he still has a right to run, but people need to be aware of who, whether it's the judge, whether it's Grant Wood, whoever's the Democrat Party, how they're tying themselves together. And we can get back, let's get back to the invasion portion of it with Grant Wood and the Democrat and Harold Granick, the Democrat, versus the Republicans. So let's look at it from, you know, we have our problems here locally with, you know, illegals and things like that. It's not as big as it is nationally, but millions and millions of people coming across that border every year, illegal. And, you know, a while back, Abbott started sending buses out of state to other states. And you've got, you know, New York City, Chicago. Now we have Martha's Vineyard, and we have VP Kamala Harris residents. And between Arizona, Texas with Governor Abbott, and Florida now, with Ron DeSantis, Governor DeSantis, sending them to Martha's Vineyard. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, I'm for sending them back, you know, where they came from, but they're causing havoc.
But DeSantis has sent migrants on a plane to Martha's Vineyard. Now, this is where the Obamas have a home, Oprah, Beyonce, even James Taylor.
And, you know, we'd said before that it's a little bit of theater. You know, you're kind of getting some people's attention, but sending them to Martha's Vineyard is like the ultimate troll level. The only thing I could see beyond that would be sending them to the White House lawn.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of people were kind of like, this is window dressing, doesn't mean a whole lot. Let's send them back. Well, until we close the border, sending them back is not going to fix the problem. So what we can do now is to throw the problem in their face. You know, the miscreants in D.C., they don't care about what goes on in flyover country here in Texas or in Arizona or New Mexico. They only care what goes on the coasts. So we're left in the cold on our own because they don't have to face the problem. Well, you know what? The good thing about this is putting our problem in their face, which is where it needs to be, because their job is to solve this problem. And if they're ignoring it, they're not doing their job. That's why we're putting it in their face.
Actually, the tactic is working pretty good, because the numbers I have right now that I looked up were about 7,900 are going to D.C. And we talked about the illegal aliens going to, you know, VP Harris's house. And there were 2 buses of 101 illegal immigrants going, and most of them were from Venezuela. But they're going, and we have a video of them out front of the VP's residence.
I would think the VP would have actually liked this, since she's a commie, since, you know, Venezuela's a kind of a communist state. So,
and you know what? Socialism took over, right? So you get what you get. And there it is, the U.S. Naval Observatory, and you know, you got to give them credit. So they're going to D.C., and we've got some video here of the 101 that came off the 2 buses, and people talking. And there's a guy that spoke on Fox, and let's see this video. And he's basically talking about, you know, hey, there's an open border. We're just coming across. we're illegal, yes, but you guys have an open border.
And Vice President Harris said that the border is closed. Is the border closed? Do you believe that the border is closed, or is it open?
It's open, not closed. The border is open.
The border is open. Do you believe that all the migrants believe that the border is open?
Yeah, everybody believes that the border is open.
Is it not lost on anybody that, the border states have been absorbing millions and millions and millions of migrants coming into and passing through their states? And while we've been screaming, we've been having to deal with it on our own. We throw less than 10,000 in D.C. and other places, and they're freaking out. Their hair's on fire like the world's going to end. Where have you been? Welcome to my world.
I really like them sending them to Martha's Vineyard because the population of Martha's Vineyard is only like 20,000. So if they send 1,000 or 2,000 illegals up there, it's going to be right. That problem's going to be in everyone's face. And I'll bet you that a lot of those liberal elites that live up there in Martha's Vineyard are going to be a lot more favorable to the wall idea.
We talked about it earlier, and we've got a video of, the plane that Governor DeSantis sent to Martha's Vineyard. And you're right. I mean, if you want to hit the Democrat socialist people, then that's what you do. And we talked about that. And, let's talk about Chicago. There's only about 360 plus people that have been sent to Chicago. And you would think that it's millions coming across our border like they already do. And you had the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, and she is like, quote, "This is a national problem. It needs a national solution. Cities and states cannot be left to fend for ourselves." They're asking and begging for all kinds of FEMA money, federal money, you name it. And now all of a sudden, you've got the mayor of Chicago, the liberal city, guns, anti-gun, everything. And now they're saying, we can't handle these 360 immigrants, illegal aliens that are coming across the border.
But if this moment continues for weeks and months, there's going to be, there has to be more. There's a finite number of resources that are available through FEMA. We intend to get every single penny that we possibly can. And we need, DC needs more assistance.
I don't care how we arrive at the solution for them to finally admit that cities and states should not be left to fend for themselves. I'll take it. Keep up the good work on that.
And it's actually, like I said, I would rather them be sent over the borders, back into wherever they came from. But this appears to be working on the liberal socialist elites.
Well, we should take a cue from the Democrats on this, and we need Abbott to double down. DeSantis, Abbott, and hopefully Carrie Lake when she takes office. They need to double down on this and increase the flow of the illegals that are here going there.
And this is a huge case of what we call in politics NIMBY, not in my backyard. People will be, in favor of something until it gets in their backyard. This is what we're seeing right now with these Democrats. Now that we're putting them literally in Kamala Harris's backyard, now they've got a problem.
We mentioned New York City, and there's about 2,200 to count that have been sent there from Arizona, Texas, and Florida. And the mayor there, Mayor Adams, said, "We are at a breaking point." So you have the mayor of New York City and the mayor of Chicago, the liberalist cities in the world, and they're at a breaking point, and they can't handle it, and they need all this.
Wah.
For what?
Wah.
Couple of hundred, a couple of thousand.
How do they think we've felt in Texas for the last 30, 40 years that unfortunately the Republicans for years until Trump came along were just kicking this problem down the road. We're gonna strengthen our immigration system. We're gonna do all this. I'm glad that it's finally getting to a breaking point. We have to force it to a breaking point now. This is keep doing this.
No, this is nice because it's dragging the rhinos to the right, because they can't defend this. They literally. I mean, I haven't seen any Republicans come out and say anything. I've seen a bunch sitting on their hands, not supporting it.
And we have a perfect example right here in Hood County with they didn't pass it with Jack and the judge, and now they did pass it. And you've got these two mayors that just can't stand it, and yet we've still got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people coming across the border, and it's like the Abbott started it with the buses, then Arizona started it, and it's like Ron DeSantis said, hold my beer, watch this, right?
Well,
and then he goes right to Martha's Vineyard.
And I can just imagine, some DeSantis staffers, young guys sitting around in a room. Hey, how can we, ramp up the pressure on this? Bro, what if we send them up to Martha's Vineyard on a plane? Like, I can just see the guys.
Whoever that staffer was, he needs a raise and a promotion.
Yeah.
I think it probably at this point, with the pressure that's being put on all these socialist Democrat areas, I think it's going to get to a point where we might see something. Of course, it won't be till November, but we're going to see something change. And it needs to change.
Well, and we've been fighting the moderate Republicans on this for years. And obviously we've been fighting the Democrats. Now we're starting to make a lot of headway with the moderate Republicans. If Republicans take control of the House and, increase their margin in the Senate, we may force Biden or, whoever the president is in a couple of years' hands.
That would be great to see that. In the meantime, I hope we don't keep bringing more and more across the border. I hope it slows down, but by all indication, we're not going to see that. And I hope, they need to start sending them to every Democrat, socialist area, period.
I'd actually like to see him sent into to some rhino areas too, to be honest with you, because for me, historically, the dirty little secret about illegal immigration is that the establishments of both parties like illegal immigration. The Democrats like it because it's guaranteed voters if they can ever get them through the door as a citizen, or get them to vote illegally, I guess. And the big establishment, big business Republicans like them because they're cheap labor. So on the back end, the rhinos are actually just carrying water for basically, in my opinion, the fascist big corporation sector that want to call themselves Republicans, but in actuality, they're just sucking off, letting the government bring all these illegals in, giving them a way to suck tax dollars away from the taxpayers to help fund keeping the illegals here.
You've also got another group of people that have a vested interest in keeping illegal immigration as a problem are politicians themselves. They've been raising money off of this for decades. For decades, they've been doing this, and it's like the Republicans, the establishment Republicans like it, the establishment Democrats like it. We got to keep doing what we're doing and then force our hand, because if we can actually solve this problem, we can start moving on to other things, and we can, make America great again.
Yeah, we have other organizations, and I look at the National Chamber of Commerce that, all they want to do is product, sell, and they don't care if tax money is used as long as they carry on with their products. And I'm all for businesses, let them do what they need to do to prosper and grow, but not at the expense of having illegal aliens brought in here. And once again, you could bring that down to the local level. And I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it, the biggest magnet is these schools. And these kids get in these schools, and then their parents come over and they get all this free stuff, from Social Security to food to you name it. And we're spending billions of dollars on this, locally, federally, the whole work. So, you know what? Maybe they need to do this more.